often what's in the black hole are your assumptions and your blind spots.
Right.
And a lot of times your assumptions and your blind spots are it's the whole confirmation bias that we're seeing in social media and all of those things. It's like, no, they're just going to keep seeing the exact same thing. Anyone you talk to, your spouse, your best friend, your mastermind, whoever, they're often the ones seeing the exact same things, but it is a confirmation bias. It's right. So that's one of the pieces, is to say, are the people that I'm working with or the things that I'm doing actually filling in this gap that we're looking for?
Are you feeling overwhelmed, stuck, or uncertain about how to grow your business without sacrificing what really matters most? Welcome to The Business You Really Want, the show for women ready to build a sustainable, fully aligned business. Aligned with what, you ask? You, your values, your life. Seriously, it is possible. I'm Tonya Kubo, and along with business advisor extraordinaire Wynn Bortner, we're here to show you how. There is a specific moment that happens as you grow your business. It happens to all of us. You are faced with a decision that you should feel ready to make, but you don't. And it's not because you lack experience, because honestly, you wouldn't have gotten this far without some experience. It's not because you don't have options. You don't feel backed into a corner. It's because something about the decision just doesn't quite feel clear. You feel like you're missing something. So you pause and you think some more. I would argue that you probably overthink it. And then you second guess after you thought you made a decision. And this decision that should feel really simple suddenly becomes an albatross hanging around your neck. And if you're listening and thinking, that sounds awful familiar. In fact, that's where I'm at right now. I don't know what the right move is, and I don't want to get this wrong. The whole purpose of today's episode is to help you reframe that. Because I would argue, and I think Gwen will agree with me, that hesitation isn't insecurity in the traditional sense. You don't have a confidence problem. You don't have even maybe a knowledge problem. What you have is a clarity problem. And so, Gwen, I want to start here because I just think it gets mislabeled way too often. Somebody gets stuck on a decision, and you've been stuck on decisions. I've come to you because I've been stuck on a decision. And the default assumption is you're just thinking on this too much. Just make a decision, move forward, trust yourself, it'll all work out. But I have heard you tell people that's not always the case.
So I will say sometimes it actually is the case.
Fair.
Right.
Exceptions to every rule. Rules to every exception.
Sometimes it actually is the case. But the thing is we assume that's the issue 90% of the time. When actually what you're saying, I'm overthinking, I just need to make a decision, that is actually true only 5 or 10% of the time. We weighted at exactly the opposite likelihood of what it is, because sometimes that really is. That really is the case. But that is so much more rare than that. Hesitation is probably trying to tell us something different. And this is the place where I often will talk about instinct or gut reaction or any of those kinds of things, because that indecision is actually saying I'm missing something here. Right? And that missing something could be all sorts of things. And because we often don't trust our gut, although we should, let's just be honest, we really should. We put it to these other things. I'm overthinking. I'm not confident. That's that fiber to, that piece that we put it to that, because we're not saying, okay, my gut is telling me I'm not ready to make this decision, right? It's actually trying to tell us something there, that there is some hesitation
Mhm.
for a reason. Now, the hesitation can come from lots of different things. Sometimes it's because the hesitation is what I really want is A and I really want is B. And in my mind, I have no idea how to make A and B both be true.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay. So there's a hesitation there. It's like, because if I choose A, then that means I'm not choosing B. But if I choose B, that means I'm not choosing it.
Right, and
And
in my mind, they are of equal priority.
yeah, yeah. They may be completely related to different things, but sometimes, I mean, we say it all the time. When you say yes to something, you are often saying no to something else,
Right.
right? And so you may be very, like, fully aware that that's what's going on in your world
Mhm.
right now is that you've got an A and a B in your world. And if I say yes to A, I'm saying no to B. I don't want to say no to B either, right?
Mhm.
So sometimes that's the piece of it. And so that's where the hesitation's coming from. That's good data. That's good to know that,
Mhm.
right? Sometimes it's because we are not we don't have quite enough data to make the decision. We haven't
Okay.
actually got the pieces that need to be in place, right? Or, Nick Peterson talks about, are you making a different, new data, different decision, same situation, different decision based on new data,
Right.
right? Because sometimes what's happening is like, so this situation's happening and I'm going to make the same decision, but sometimes we actually have new data,
Mhm.
right? And sometimes we don't have data, right? I mean, it can be either side of that equation, but it's like, hmm, right? Back to it's an instinctive thing. It's like there's something not going on here that we need to do. And then the other thing, of course, and we were talking about this as in another I was in another mastermind conversation. And sometimes the thing is like, well, this situation feels exactly like that situation, so I need to make this decision.
Right.
But the reality was this situation that you're aligning with was when you were at a $50,000 business. And the
Yeah.
decision you're making now feels the same, but oh, I have a $200,000 business now.
Yeah, so that's I want to pause there because this is where I think the real issue lies. This is why I think that successful business owners struggle so much, is because what it feels like to them is I used to make decisions so easily. I used to be so decisive. What happened? Now I feel like I can't cross the street without a pros and cons list. And what you just said, I just want to spend a little bit of extra time here because I think it's important for the listener to hear is early stage business. First of all, a lot of our problems, the reason we think 80% of the time we're overthinking is because 80% of the time when you're a brand new business owner, you are overthinking because the answers you need are there. And the answers you need, like your decisions as an early stage business owner, what should my logo look like? What are my brand colors? What is my offer suite? Do I invoice?
Asana versus Monday.
Right. Do I invoice? Do I do auto payment? Do I let them pay automated? It's very brass tacks things that a Google search can get you like three-fourths of the way there.
Yeah,
And then you ask a couple of people and it's like good enough for government work, right?
right.
But once you get more advanced in business, we are beyond logo colors. We are beyond, do I hire, this person for $20 an hour or that person for $25 an hour? It becomes questions like, do I hire for experience or do I hire for fit? And deeper, deeper questions.
Yep.
And so I love that you're pointing out that it is perfectly normal to struggle more with decision making as you get to a higher level of business.
It absolutely is because, like I said, often it feels like the same decision. I'm going to pick on the Asana Monday decision. Like when you're
Okay,
first
fair.
starting out, right? Because we've all had to make, those kind of early software decisions. We say, do I want to use Asana or do I want to use Monday.com? And I'm not recommending or de-recommending either of these.
Yeah.
Just they were the two that popped into my head, right? And so you choose one, and they're relatively similar, and they're relatively similar price point depending on what you're doing, and blah 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 blah. And then at some point, you're much further on in your business, and the question is, do we go ClickUp? Do we go high level? Do we make the change at all? Right
Mhm.
now, this feels like the exact same decision that we made back at the beginning,
Mhm.
but it's not, because we now have to not. It's not only the cost of the software,
Mhm.
but it's the time and effort to move all of the data and do all of the migration and all of the pieces that go along with that. And we now have, more likely, either more complicated or at least more well documented and complete processes than we did way back when. And
Mhm.
so we're thinking about which of these tools really will maximize. Like, there's a whole lot more in this simple software decision
Mhm.
at this further along point than there was at the beginning. But if you just look at it at the surface, it was like, that wasn't that big of a decision. I ended up choosing such and such and it was fine. And, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, why am I stuck?
Right.
Because it's not just a software decision. It's about the resources and the time and the effort and all the other things. But we get caught in our mind saying it's exactly the same,
Mhm.
but it's not the same because we're at a very different point in the journey.
Got it. Okay. So
Does
what
that, I mean, does that feel like really tangent, like a good
Yeah.
tangible?
No, exactly. So it's like, okay. So I'm just gonna sum it up right here towards your listener. Instead of assuming something is wrong with you, recognize that your brain, your psyche, something is recognizing that everything is not adding up in this situation.
Yeah.
And so, what I'm going to say, because let's carry this project management tool example forward, mainly because every business has to make that decision at some point.
Yeah.
Even if they're going from using no tool, right, to suddenly they realize with 5 employees they need a tool. Um, so where I think people get stuck is that they think they have information. They think everything, because Google solved their problems before, they think Google can solve their problems again.
And in this case,
Why?
we're talking about Google search, like just,
Google search. Yes, I'm sorry. Google search.
yeah, not
I
just, not the tool,
Yeah, not the
but
tool
yeah,
itself. Yeah, Google search. Thank you.
yeah, or what I found on YouTube, or
Yeah,
whatever.
or
Yeah,
what the people in my mastermind said. I mean, Gwen,
yeah.
every mastermind I've ever been to has had somebody telling me that whatever problem I came to the table with would be solved if I used the same project management system that they used, or if I used the same software that they used. So if they've looked at everything, right? So in the case of the project management system, okay, I've done my cost comparison. I know I know that all things are equal here. I've done my features and benefits comparison. I know you've said part of it is because there's layers, there's a cost of acquisition and all of that. But why does that not appear clear?
Well, because, there's lots of reasons why it might not appear clear. One is, you may instinctively realize there's something more complicated about this, but you may not actually understand what's more complicated about it,
Mm.
right? I feel like we've done enough recording recently. All the podcasts are like
Same,
mushed, and so, right?
same.
So we may have talked about this last podcast, and it may have been like 6 or 8 podcasts ago. So I'm just going to put that little disclaimer in here. But one of the things that happens as we do these kind of
Mhm.
situations is we think we may have the information,
Mhm.
right? But like I said, instinctively it's going, no, 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 there's something here. And the problem is we don't actually have anyone around us who can point that out,
Right.
right? And so at that point, we feel like we're overthinking
Mhm.
because we're circling, it's one of those things like, I'm circling around this big black hole and I keep circling around this big black hole and and there's no one to help you go down that big black hole to figure out what's down there. But
Mhm.
it's like, I have a feeling this big black hole actually means something,
Right.
right? And so there's this layer there that becomes problematic. You know,
Mhm.
I'm going to use that term, a little bit loosely. And so we've got data. There's a big black hole, but that data isn't actually useful yet.
Right. Well, and also kind of going back to something you said before, kind of our mutual example of the project management system, is people will say, "Oh, you have this problem. Here is everything it does." And you walk away going, "Okay, it does all those things." But like, does it do all those things? Does it do the things this way? And because you know the inside of your business and they don't, they only know what you've told them. And what they've heard likely is all the ways that your business is similar to theirs or their desires are similar to yours. And they're putting all this intent that they had onto what you are objectively describing. And so I feel like there's the information thing. That's facts, that's data, that's objective. But the black hole piece is the fact that the information, it's the context matters piece. I was trying to avoid saying that, Gwen. That's why I'm hemming and hawing because you always say it. But it's the
I
context
love it that I've got
piece.
you saying it all the time because it does. Context does matter.
Because it's the context that gets to the root, right?
Yeah. Yeah. See, and that's the thing. The black hole is there's a root cause problem here.
Mhm.
And I've been working around it and I don't know how to get to it.
Yeah.
I can't identify it. In real practical, situations, it's when we're doing tactical symptom fixes and not actually figuring out what is the real root cause.
Mhm.
Sticking with our, kind of project management, automation organization system thing, often we find people are trying to change their automation process by, getting a new software, but it's actually not even the process or the software. It's the person who's implementing it.
Mhm.
And they're not looking at the person who's implementing it for, there can be 1,000 reasons why they're
Oh, yeah.
not, right? It can be because they they helped me get started and they've been so critical and they know everything about the business. And it's like, yeah, and that's part of the problem,
Mhm.
right? Or they still want to do it their way, which doesn't actually work at this size of business.
Mhm.
I'm making up 2 or 3 examples, but the thing is, it's like, I'm going to fix this by putting in a new automation software. It's like, no, you're not, because that's not actually the problem. But this is back to that root cause piece that we're missing,
Mhm.
right? But back to, there's this instinct of, I'm missing some critical piece of information,
Right.
right? And so, where and how do you get the data becomes the question. How do I get the information that I need
Mhm.
to actually understand, oh, no, this actually is a software problem. This software really isn't designed to do the type of things that we're doing now in the business. We now need to move to, click up or go high level, or, the list goes on,
Right.
or not,
Mhm.
right? I mean, that becomes the issue, because maybe you do need to upgrade your software. But maybe there's this thing of like, I don't think I actually want to do this because I don't think it's actually the problem.
Right. Well, and because we've done these upgrades before, you know, because maybe what the problem is that the software does a whole lot more than we've ever used it for,
Mhm.
right? And just the people who
Yeah.
use it learn to use it from their predecessor and they don't know. So I feel like we've done a good job of agitating the problem. And like you said, the question then becomes like, what do I do next? But before we get there, I want to flip it um, because I want you to draw or paint me a picture of what it looks like when somebody does have clarity on their real problem. Because that's the other thing is, somebody is listening. They're like, well, is this me? Is this not me? I don't know. And then they start thinking that they're overthinking that. So what
Which they
happens?
might be. That might be the 10%.
True. But what happens when somebody does have clarity on the real problem? What does that look like? What does that feel like? How does the decision making change?
So we just finished a Savvy Syndicate, which is our very, small, intimate mastermind retreat. Like, there's only a few people there. It maxes out at 4 people
Mhm.
plus me, right? So it's very intimate, which allows us to have, great conversations and deep vulnerability and, all of those things. And because of that, one of the things that I will say is when you have clarity, there is an emotional release.
Mm.
And or it doesn't feel hard
Mhm.
because it's like, "Oh, yeah, that makes sense." Now, sometimes it's like I said, sometimes it's an emotional release, but it still feels hard because it's like, "Oh, I know what I need to do. Oh, crap, that's gonna be really hard to do that thing." Okay,
Mhm.
using the
Mhm.
example that we were just talking about of, "Oh, I don't actually need to change my software. Crap, I need to let Kelly go."
Yeah.
Right? So, there's this emotional release on the decision,
Mhm.
but it could still be hard,
Right.
right? So not saying, it's absolute, but other times it really is about, oh, well, I can totally see how to do this. I could,
Mhm.
once it's like, this makes perfect sense. I know where to go. I know this is the right thing. I know how this is going to how it's going to get me to where I want to go.
Mhm.
Right. Which usually also has an emotional release.
Yeah.
But we had lots of conversations that kept coming up was like, oh my God, when you just broke my brain.
I'm glad because you break my brain all the time, Gwen. In a
Right.
good way. It's in the
Right.
best
In
way
a good way.
possible, but
Right, in a good way, but the break the brain was all of a sudden this tension that was being held went chunk,
yeah.
I mean, like, it really was that, and a lot of times it was like, "Oh, the reason all of this feels so hard,"
Mhm.
right, is I haven't been looking at the full picture of something. I haven't realized what all of the data was. I didn't see down the black hole. Right? As soon as I say, "Oh, I've already been down that black hole, and what's
Mhm.
at the bottom is blah blah blah." And they're like, "Oh," right? That change all of a sudden it just changes everything. And that's the piece is that the decision becomes, I'm not gonna say easy because, like I said, sometimes it's like, "Oh, this makes sense. This is gonna be hard."
Yeah.
Right? But it becomes more obvious.
Right, and that's where the ease comes in, right?
Yeah,
Like, if you hadn't said that, I would say, well, what becomes easier? Because I think that's a marker too, right? That's a symptom of,
yeah.
oh, okay, I've got the clarity I need because this
But the thing
feels
I
the same.
watched was energy, and we
Yeah.
talk about it all the time on here of
Mhm.
that energy is a really important thing to stay aware of, and it's
Mhm.
really hard for us to do because we don't have any super easy access ready-made tools to help us track energy.
Right. What do you think changes or shifts in how they evaluate their options? Like coming off of Savvy Syndicate, you could see visibly how the energy shifted. I mean, you had a lot of benefits there being in person and
Right,
seeing it
yeah.
all shift. But what shifted in how they evaluated their options, do you think?
Oh, it became so easy. I mean, that was the thing, is that there were things that they were like, I don't know if I should do A or B. And as soon as there was clarity on whatever the missing piece of data was, it was like, oh, well, then I do A or I do B.
Yeah.
Or it became very obvious for them. Oh, I can do A and B. I was thinking these were in conflict, but I just need to do A for a bit and then B for a bit and then A for a bit. And then, I mean, like, I'm making these kinds of
Right.
situations up, right? Obvious really is the right word. It becomes obvious. And even if they still don't completely know, it's obvious what their next step is.
Right.
They
Because
may not know what the actual final decision is, but it's like, oh, but the next thing I need to do is blah.
right. And speaking from personal experience, I think, the decision, part of what makes a decision obvious is fewer options seem relevant,
Right.
right?
But
It's
that's
like,
back to having a clarity, that missing piece of data,
yeah.
which sometimes has helped sometimes it's actual data. It's like, for one of the situations, we talk about a whole lot of things. We've got 2 full days. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of time to cover a lot of things. And so one of them was, okay, this is the situation. This is hard. Their argument is X. Go check the data to see if what they're assuming is true is actually true, because they don't even actually have access to the real data. So they don't know,
Mhm.
right? They're just doing it off of their own feeling. And I said, it could be right. I don't know, but it could be completely wrong. So sometimes it's about actually getting the data, the actual tangible data. But sometimes it's about getting clarity, which, I think the term we like to use is, it becomes a diagnostic of saying, oh, I've been looking at it through this really narrow lens and I just need to do this. And as soon as I change the lens by a few degrees, right, and that's that diagnostic piece, it's like, oh, everything becomes so much more clear
Right.
on what's going on.
Right. Because here's where I think we all do founders a disservice is we think success comes from becoming a better decision maker. We say, oh, if you become a better decision maker, you make faster decisions, you make more right decisions, all of this stuff, right? But
Yeah.
it's not so much about you're becoming a better decision maker. It's that the you see everything, the situation clearly enough that the decision makes itself back to it's obvious, back to you now have that clarity. And, again, going back to our listener, here's where you come in. Because if you're listening and you're realizing like, I don't think I'm clear on what I'm deciding, the unpopular truth is that you can't push through it. Like you cannot force your way through clarity. You have to step back and, to your point, Gwen, change the perspective that you're looking through so that you see it differently. Because as you mentioned earlier in the episode, the higher you go, the higher the cost of making the wrong decision. But the cost of delaying your decisions is just as high, right?
Yes.
Sitting on the fence going, well, we don't want to do that because we might change our system. And that is expensive too.
Well, and my mom, who's extremely wise, said this to me. It's now well over 30 or 35 years ago, when I was being very indecisive, which is very unusual for me, highly
Mm-hmm.
unusual. She said, you need to realize, of course, that not making a decision is also a decision.
Exactly.
Right. And not that that's a wrong decision.
Right.
Because sometimes not making the decision is actually the right decision
Mhm.
because maybe we don't have enough data. Maybe
Yeah.
there's not enough things. In this case, she knew I wasn't going to get any new data in another day, week, month, or year than what
Right.
I already had. There
Mhm.
was no more new data to come in. I had all of the information
Right.
I needed to have, right? So in this case, that was what that piece, that piece was. But that is that holding off and just you know, circling the black hole using that, kind of a thing won't necessarily get us where we need. We need someone who can help us see into the black hole, get us down in the black hole, help us figure out what that is. And sometimes it's not the people who are around you, because back to often what's in the black hole are your assumptions and your blind spots.
Right.
And a lot of times your assumptions and your blind spots are it's the whole confirmation bias that we're seeing in social media and all of those things. It's like, no, they're just going to keep seeing the exact same thing. Anyone you talk to, your spouse, your best friend, your mastermind, whoever, they're often the ones seeing the exact same things, but it is a confirmation bias.
Mhm.
It's right. So that's one of the pieces, is to say, are the people that I'm working with or the things that I'm doing actually filling in this gap that we're looking for to fill in to be able to make the decision.
Yes. And that's the important piece, right? Because honestly, usually the answer is no. Back to, because if they were, you wouldn't have that intuitive hesitation or intuition
Right.
driven hesitation.
Yeah.
So, we are out of time. So, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut to the chase. And I am going to say that if you want help getting clear on what's going on before you make your next move, because you just can't push play because there's something holding you back, hop on a call with Gwen. You can book your clarity call with her by going to everydayeffectiveness.com/clarity. It'll be a 30-minute call. Tell her what you're ruminating over, and what she will do is summarize the situation from her perspective, let you know if there's anything she sees that you haven't considered. You'll talk it through, and then chances are you'll know what your next step is. Thanks for tuning in to The Business You Really Want with Gwen Bortner. I'm Tonya Kubo, reminding you that sustainable success is within reach. Make sure to subscribe to the show and visit thebusinessyoureallyWant.com for more resources. Until next time, keep dreaming big and acting with intention.